what is, in your opinion, what is one thing parents can do to support their athlete child?
I think probably the most important thing is teaching them accountability.
Okay.
I've been working with kids. I started working with athletes when I was still playing, and I counted the years. I've been doing it full time for about 15 years, maybe a little bit more, but as far as like working with kids, it's been more like 20 or 25 years was when I first started working with younger athletes. And I do know that early in my coaching career or teaching on the side, I would teach what I knew worked for me, whether it was mechanics or even like, the mindset out there. And looking back on it now, I probably encouraged too much blaming of teammates, blaming of umpires, coaching, whatever. And, now at almost 50 and doing this full time and really seeing the different levels of what kids need, different areas kids are weak in, where they're strong in, accountability and making sure that they are focused on the controllables versus the uncontrollables. Parents need to do a better job of those conversations at home, what they allow the kids to talk about. Umpires is without a doubt the biggest scapegoat for lack of production, so umpires tend to be the easy out. If a pitcher feels they missed a pitch or a young hitter feels they missed a pitch, even though they had other pitches to throw strikes with or other pitches to hit, if they don't produce, at the end of the day, they go back to the dugout, in the car ride home, at home around the dinner table, wherever it is. Inevitably, the umpire's so-called mistakes will come up, and then it's used to blame a lack of production, to be honest. And parents are unfortunately feed into that conversation, and also unfortunately, coaches, they may not realize it, but when they're in the dugout talking about things like umpires, they're just instilling a kind of a mindset amongst all those kids of focused on the wrong things.
Do you think some of that is like human nature, a self-protective, just not impulse, but like unconscious or subconscious way to protect oneself from mistakes?
Well, I think 100%. I mean, think about when we were all younger, and all of us in some area of our life still do it to this day, and probably for our whole life. But especially when we're younger, if we did something we weren't supposed to, or at some point we learn our natural reaction, like, hey, if I say this,
Yeah. Like lying. You're basically telling a lie.
in a way, like if I say this, it's gonna get me out of getting in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? Just something simple. So that habit carries on into sports. And then, and one of the reasons I talk about this on our social media, talk about the kids I work with, I talk about the parents, I've talked to a lot of coaches about it, was because I made the same mistakes. I, as a younger professional, I remember so much about when I was an adolescent, but a young professional, the first part of my career, I was absolutely weak-minded. And I made a lot of excuses, did a lot of blaming. Looking back on it now, my career at that point was very inconsistent the first half when I did have that weakness. And that is one reason why I feel so comfortable and confident talking about it was hopefully I can get the message across to at least one family. Like, stop having these conversations, stop allowing it.
Yeah.
It's not healthy, it's not productive, we're stalling development. The mindset is not good.
I think even being held accountable for even the little things, like making sure your spikes are in your bag, you've got your belt, you've got the right jersey for that day or whatever. Like, to me, parenting at one point, parenting littles, that's kind of where it starts, so that if you get to the field and you're missing a shoe or you have the wrong jersey, like that's on you. Like, you're supposed to double check, make sure you've got everything in your bag and grab your water, and maybe I'll bring the snack bag or whatever, but like, probably starting with little stuff like that as they're younger and things that they're capable of doing and thinking about can lead into holding themselves accountable for those types of things.
I think a lot of it has to do with what happens at home too, you know, and we as parents, looking back on it, I know I for sure feel this way. I'm sure you do too, that there's things that we wish we would have done different. I think there are some things we did really well. For example, our kids started doing their own laundry and being responsible for that very early in life. Brooke started doing it when she was 8, because Zachary started when he was 10 and Christopher started when he was 12. We just started them all at the same point in life, or the same time. But little things like that in life, you know, they learn, they take on that responsibility. And I wasn't around for the kids a lot when they were in their youth sports. I was traveling a lot then. But thinking about like where Brooke is now at 17, I can think of in the past 5-10 years, a couple instances where she forgot something. You know, other than that, I'm wondering if pushing and forcing some of that stuff earlier in life for her, because we did it at the same time with her brothers, if that helped her. I mean, I don't know, who knows? I don't think there's a perfect way to do any of this, but I bet you with what you're bringing up, what you're talking about, a lot of that starts at home in non-sport stuff.
Yeah, but like when we did that, I mean, maybe our intention was not like, okay, let's start teaching accountability. Our intention was, I'm going crazy with all this laundry. They've got to start doing this themselves. And if they run out of clothes, that's on them, and I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Like, it was not, our intention was not, let's teach them this big life lesson.
Yeah. But I do think that looking back on it, that probably was a big part of them learning some responsibility like that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Should we jump into today's episode?
What do we got? What are we talking about today?
Your first full season, our first season together, since we hadn't met yet.
1997.
Yeah.
Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit before we get into the season. Let's talk a little bit about leading up to that. So we met in January of 97. We talked about that in the last episode. We obviously spent a lot of time together for the next month and a half to 2 months, because I left, or we left, because we all drove down, you, myself, and a friend named Dave. We all drove down to spring training, which was in Mesa, Arizona. We drove down and probably left somewhere towards the middle to end of February, because spring training started first week in March.
Right. And if you went early, I remember you always left around Valentine's Day. Yeah, like middle, let's say the 15th to the 20th. Like it was somewhere in there, because we had to do our little Valentine's Day thing before you left.
Yeah, so later in my career, I ended up had multiple years where I went to Major League Spring Training. So there's Major League Spring Training and Minor League Spring Training. Yeah. And Major League Spring Training would start typically around Valentine's Day, middle of the month, middle of February. And minor league camp would start around the first week of March.
Okay.
So at that point in my career, there was no major league camp. There was just minor league camp. So we would, whenever we drove down, I always liked to get there early. I think we always planned on getting there 5 to 7 days early. So I'm going to guess we left around the last day in February, maybe the 1st of March.
Yeah, who knows?
But tell us, you're going to talk a little bit here.
Okay.
Tell us about what you remember of our trip down from Portland, Oregon to Mesa, Arizona. We made a pit stop. Where did we stop?
Las Vegas. It was definitely my first time to Vegas. None of us were 21 at that point, so I don't know what we thought we were going to do.
Probably just experience.
But we were all 18 or over, so I had a Groupon for a hotel. That's how long ago it was. And maybe your mom found a coupon. Because that sounds like something your mom would do. Yep. And I think I called on the actual telephone and made a reservation. And we drove down. I don't know if we stopped. We must have stopped before we got to Vegas, don't you think?
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay.
That might have been,
Oh, we went down to Southern Oregon, I think, in Ashland.
maybe. I remember stopping in Ashland overnight one time.
That's. I think that was it. That was
Beautiful
like.
area.
Oh yeah, but like, what's that like? 5 hours. Like that's nothing compared to other road trips that we've taken. So, anyways, we get to Vegas and we find the hotel. Don't ask me how we found any of this stuff because this is way before any type of navigation. Did we even have MapQuest? Like, I don't even remember if we had that. But anyways, we find the hotel. It's very sus. There are people lingering outside on the street. So we kind of get this weird feeling about like, it's probably not the best place to stay. But we didn't have any other option then because it was already nighttime by the time we got there. We didn't know where else to go.
I don't remember this part.
I do remember there was a hot tub in the room.
Really?
Ew.
Oh boy.
We didn't use it.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what we did because again, we're all under 21. We probably went into some casinos and like walked around and stuff and walked around outside. I mean, honestly, I don't know. It was a really long time ago, but I do remember we must have stayed for more than one night because we ended up staying at the MGM Grand for a night. Like we left the sketchy hotel and went to a decent hotel. And then like we made a whole trip out of this. This was not a time crunch. We got to get there ASAP type of, like we made a trip out of it. So we stayed in the sketchy hotel the first night. We stayed at the MGM Grand the next night, and we may have left the next day. I don't, like that's, a flash, kind of a long flash of a memory of that, of the trip down there. I do remember listening to some comedian CDs in the car that Dave brought with him. I think it was Adam Sandler. And just dying of laughter.
Yeah.
I'm not going to repeat what it was because it's totally inappropriate. But
Yeah.
it was, I had never heard it before, and we were all just crying, laughing, dying, just so funny.
Yeah. Okay, so we get to Arizona.
Yeah. I don't remember where we stayed. I mean,
Well, so
who knows? I know
so
like
you
the
guys-
team put you guys up places, but like
Yeah, so you guys may have stayed there one night and then you flew out pretty quickly.
probably.
Before you left,
Yeah.
you reminded me of this story the other day. Before you and Dave left to fly home, there was a moment that we went to Fitch Park, and I was going there just to, I think, check in, get my locker set up, whatever. And we get to the complex.
Yes.
We get out of the car,
Yes.
and we are walking up to the front door.
Well, we're just walking. We're on some like pathway.
Yep.
There's multiple fields, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Yes.
remember, I didn't spend a lot of time at the ballparks.
Yeah.
So your memories of them are way different than my memories of them. I just remember the three of us, walking in. I think you were there just to like check in, let somebody know you had arrived and this is the hotel and whatever. And I remember walking in and you and I are holding hands, super young love. We've only been together 6 weeks at this point. And I remember you let go. And I remember in the moment thinking like, okay, just let go. And then some type of like inner voice was like, it's nothing to get upset about. It doesn't mean anything. So I didn't say anything. And I like at some point at another time, I think we talked about it. I probably asked you, just like we talked about it, and you just explained that like you didn't want anybody that was there, and anybody meaning higher up staff or whatever. You didn't want any of them thinking you had any type of distraction in your life coming into your first full season of, your professional career. And I was just like, oh, okay.
When you when you said that the other day, my mind went to like, that doesn't sound like something a 17-year-old would think of on his own. So I'm assuming
You were 18 by this point,
okay,
but still.
okay. I'm assuming that that was something that my father, my dad must have brought up. He must have said that, put that thought in my head. But now as a coach, looking at it, if I, you know, years later when I was coaching kids that age, if they were at the park with a girlfriend and I saw them holding a hand, I wouldn't care.
Well, you wouldn't care.
But and I doubt a lot of coaches would either. Like we were all that age at one point. We all
Yeah.
understood what it was like to be that age, and you know, and I mean, obviously we wouldn't walk into the facility holding hands. So I don't even remember where we were when this happened. So I don't know if like what part of the complex. I don't remember.
No, we were literally walking in, like we
Yeah.
were inside whatever main entrance,
maybe
and we
that
were
had
on
something
some
to do
kind of
with it.
cement path, just walking towards wherever you were going to find somebody to check in with, wherever that was. But I probably felt that way because leading up to you leaving, my grandma had given me some really good advice. I don't know where she got this, probably just life experience, but she told me to never ever be mad at you for being gone because that you're working, and in this, you know, situation, your work took you away, and it wasn't your fault you were away. That was your job. It took you wherever, and just to not be mad at you for that. So I'm sure me kind of subconsciously being like, okay, that's nothing to get upset over. It's not even anything. That probably played into me feeling like that.
Okay. Well, thank you for reminding me of that story of.
Maybe it was just like a moment of maturity that you had.
I don't know. I highly doubt it.
Never know.
Let's talk about, at some point after that moment, you guys left. You and Dave
Yeah.
flew back home.
Yeah.
So spring training for me, just to share a little bit about that experience, that was my first spring training. 1997, they put us up in a Motel 6, 2 players to a room, and there was
the whole hotel,
the
right?
whole hotel,
However many rooms that is.
was the minor league Cubs players, and there were so many that
All levels?
so we had the Motel 6, and we also had a Best Western.
Okay.
And they had the new draft picks, younger players in the Motel 6. I don't know what they do now. There was 3 landlines, phone lines to make outside calls. So
To the whole hotel, there's
whole
3
place.
lines.
So all of us would be fighting to find a landline. So you'd pick up the handle, hit 9, and you either got a dial tone or a fast busy. Fast busy meant all lines are taken. So you'd hang up, you push the button to hang it up, hit 9 again, hang it. So we're continually doing that.
And most of the guys in the hotel are probably doing that because you're all getting back there or getting home from dinner or whatever. It's all kind of on the same routine. Everybody wants to call home.
Yep. So I believe we also used calling cards back then. So like when you look at where life is now, you can't even imagine us trying to do that, how frustrated we would be. This is ridiculous. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So just the way of life back then, and you know, our kids will never know a life like that.
Having to pay to call long distance.
Yeah. No texting, no FaceTime. You know, it's just all so different now. But anyway, so that was a little bit of the living. As far as a spring training day went, we would get up, if I recall, around 6:30. They would have breakfast for us.
At the field or at the
If
hotel?
I recall, it was closer to the other hotel, so the Motel 6. So they had these, 16 passenger white vans that they would, there was all the trainers, some coaches, they would ship us, shuttle us back and forth, take us to breakfast, we would eat, and then from there we would go over to, and this restaurant, they would just make us whatever we wanted. Or I don't know. I don't remember if we had like a small menu we could order from, or if it was I don't think it was buffet style. I can't remember. But anyway, so from there we'd go to the field and go to your locker, get there early enough. If you needed treatment, you had to be there a little bit sooner. There was always a treatment bus for guys that, if they had a sprained ankle or an arm issue, they needed to get to the field earlier to get that treatment done before stretch time was. So let's just say that we probably had to be out on the field, 8, 9 o'clock, somewhere in there. And then for the next spring training games would usually start around 1 o'clock. So we had 3 to 4 hours of some sort of practice.
And then you'd probably have lunch.
Yep. So it's probably like 9 to 12-ish. There was probably a 3-ish hour workout. And I mean, we covered everything. Any sort of baseball fundamental, on top of if you had a bullpen that day, there it was. Again, I talked about this a couple episodes. It was mass player development, and of course it's our job, so you have time. We're at the field 25, 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
So there's way more time than what youth teams get. Even high school teams, high school programs do get a lot of time with their kids, but like that's a whole
It's your job. So it was a full-time job.
A whole nother level of player development. So again, my first taste of like how much player development takes, what player development looks like, how consistent you need to be with it. You can't think that just because you've done something once or twice that you should have it figured out. This game doesn't work that way. So spring training lasted about 6 weeks. 6 weeks for Major League spring training.
Right.
Minor League spring training was about a month, 3 to 4 weeks. And then from there, towards the end of spring training, every player gets assigned to where they're going to go. Unfortunately, some players, usually older players, are on the chopping block and get released, and they become a free agent, and a lot of those guys, that's it for them. A lot of, some guys will go on to another team. We'll get into that later, but that happened to me 2 times later in my career. Not a fun feeling. But that year, first full season, they assigned me to what was their low season A-ball team, which was Rockford, Illinois. So after spring training, we had like 3 days. I think they flew us all up there because we went from Mesa, Arizona up to Illinois, so definitely too far to drive because some guys would have their own cars, so guys would ship their cars up there. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they flew us. So
You must have shipped your car at least that year.
Yeah. Did I?
Because we drove your car down, so you had your car.
Okay.
And then Dave and I flew back, so
Yeah.
you must have, there was probably some like
It's 30 years ago. I'm
company.
having a hard time remembering the details.
Right. There was probably some, I remember it being a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You had to pay for it,
Yeah.
and that
It's like $500
that
or
was
$600
that.
bucks.
But yeah,
Okay, so Rockford, Illinois.
it was worth it because then you could have your car. You didn't have to ask somebody to drive it out.
Yeah. All right, let's get into Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah, the Rockford Cubbies.
Rockford Cubbies, the Rockford Peaches. I should have done a little research on this, but the Rockford Peaches was a female baseball team that was there in Rockford years before we were there. That's what.
Like a league of your own?
Exactly.
Okay. Wait, you're talking about they were there back then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Not on the field we were on. But,
Right.
So funny thing about Rockford. I don't think I've ever shared this with you. So
Okay.
when a field is set up,
Okay.
when someone is building a baseball field,
Yeah.
a little engineering here for you.
Okay.
When a field is being made, when you're figuring out where home plate is going to be, where the foul lines are going to be, so you have to set the angle of that field such that the sun doesn't set in center field and
Yeah.
the sun doesn't set behind home plate. So ideally, and I know the earth shifts, so the sun is setting in a different spot and rising in a different spot. But you want to try to set it to where the sun rises and sets foul pole to foul, corner to corner of the
Okay.
field. Okay, so foul pole to foul pole.
Yeah.
Now, whoever did this field way back when, the sun would dang near set
Didn't know
right
that.
in center field. So it was you would hear hitters talk all the time.
Oh.
Just, especially if I recall right, the sun was to the third base side of the pitcher's mound.
Perfect.
I believe. And the truth is that there was a lot of fields, older fields.
Oh.
I don't think this mistake is made as much anymore, but a lot of fields were like that.
Okay.
If I recall, Huntsville, Alabama was a little bit like that, and they even had like a super tiny batter's eye. Do you know what a batter's eye is?
It's like a blank spot on the fencing in center field.
So
So there's no like signage, so your line of sight is
but
not
it's usually really
disturbed.
tall.
Oh,
Like think
okay.
about spring training fields, they're huge. You're
Okay.
talking like 50, 60 feet high.
Oh.
And it's really wide.
Okay.
So that big area out there it's called a batter's eye, so that when the pitcher throws the pitch,
Yeah.
lefty or righty,
You can
it's
see
not,
it.
yes, but like, so places, older stadiums like that were notorious for having a super small batter's eye. So you would get pitchers that would throw like outside of it. Like sometimes we see lefties that threw from the side or righties, and the ball would be coming from outside of the batter's eye. Or some of them were so short, if you get a super tall pitcher where he's got a high arm slot, his ball was releasing out of the clouds. Mm-hmm. So you would hear hitters complain about it all the time, and I'm sure hopefully some guys listening to this will remember sometimes when it makes it
Yeah.
very, and high school fields are often like this too. They have very small batter eyes. So we're there, season starts in early March.
Nope, April.
Sorry, early April.
Yeah.
Thank you. Early April. And in the Midwest, it's still really cold. Mm-hmm. Before I get into that, do you remember when you moved out to Rockford? Because you did end up...
Very early in the season.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I think, well, let me back up a little bit because, like, the short version is when you and I met, I didn't know what you did for a living. I didn't know how you made money because remember, I had graduated high school the year before. Mm-hmm. I wasn't there for any of if there was any like hoopla about you in high school, I was not there for that. So when you and I met, I didn't know what you did. I knew that you had a nice car and that was it. Mm-hmm. And I knew you didn't have a job because you were always meeting me after I was getting off work, and if I wasn't like working at the bookstore, we were together. That was it until, like as you and I would go out like to the mall or whatever, we would always see somebody that knew you, whether it was like a parent or whatever. And, oh, when are you leaving? Blah, blah, blah. They would talk about, so finally one day I don't even know if you even remember this, but I think we were in your parents' downstairs at their house in Hazeldale. And I was like, so are you going somewhere? I was just like...
How did we never talk about it before that?
You don't talk about yourself.
But you never asked?
Nope. Never asked. You and I both knew we just wanted to be together.
Yeah.
And that we'd go to movies, go out to dinner, watch TV, whatever. We just did whatever. We just hung out together. So no, and I literally asked you like, are you going somewhere? And then you said, you don't know what I do you? And I was like, no.
I do not remember this conversation.
You handed me a newspaper article. You didn't even want to like say the words, I guess. I don't know, but you handed me a little newspaper article that was printed in our local paper about you getting drafted with the Cubs and, going, instead of going to college, going the professional.
Someone had to have told you before that.
No. No. I swear on everything, I did not know. So, cut to, we drive down to spring training. It's a super fun trip. And then, I fly back home. And then, like, suddenly, we're not together anymore. Mm-hmm. I fell apart emotionally. Mm. I don't know if you remember phone calls from that time. Okay, I was a wreck. Crying at work, in front of customers, just like full on emotional, like no emotional stability whatsoever.
It's called young love.
It is. And it was like the first time, it was almost like a breakup, but not breaking up. Like I felt heartbroken, but we weren't broken up. And it was just really, really, really hard. And I remember my manager at the bookstore that I worked at basically one day was like, well, why don't you just go live with him? And I was like, I didn't even think of that. I never would have thought of that. I just,
We're too young to understand.
yeah, just too young for that to even be like a possibility, like move out of my parents' house and live by myself. What? Just never thinking of that. So obviously, I mean, we must have talked about it at some point, and thought it was a good idea. Just wait until you got to Rockford and got like an apartment set up, and because you basically, after finding out where you were going, had to get an apartment. Like the teams didn't help set up housing, so it was all you just were kind of on your own. So it was like, well, wait till we get there and get an apartment, and then like we must have set a date for April whatever, and then I flew to Chicago, and I don't know, you must have picked me up at the airport or something, and like that was it. I had like 2 giant suitcases with me, and we had a roommate, and did we even have rental furniture? I don't even know.
Yes, we did.
By then, you had gotten it all set up.
I would assume, because we have to get that stuff set up pretty quickly, because they only gave us 3 days in the team hotel,
Right.
and during that whole time we had to
Yeah.
find out where to live and get it all set up. Again, very different now. Now the teams have to provide housing, so the players don't have to do any of that stuff.
I mean, I didn't have any part in
Yeah.
that. Like at that point, I didn't have any part in that because I didn't know anything about Rockford, Illinois. But obviously, there was some kind of apartment complex somebody knew about, because it was more than just us that lived there. And
So the way it worked back then was, so like the Rockford Cubbies had their own front office people,
yes,
and those people would form relationships with a couple apartment complexes in the community, and then give that information to our trainer, and the trainers would hand that information to us, and then it was on us to
set everything up.
to go to these places, get everything set up,
Yeah.
get your furniture set up, get your utilities set up. Oh my God, so many things. And
so
then
many things.
with the nature of
Online wasn't a thing, so
Yeah.
you were probably having to make all these phone calls. I'm sure maybe you had something in your name and our roommate had something in his name, and like I remember we paid 2/3 of the rent because there was 2 of us. I ended up getting a part-time job. He paid his third of the rent.
where was your job that year?
Eddie Bauer at Cherryvale Mall, Rockford, Illinois. I could still answer the phone probably if it's still there.
Is Eddie Bauer still a thing?
Yes. Yes.
I know we don't go to malls
It
much,
is.
but
It is, yeah.
do they have like a storefront or just online?
I think so. I don't know. I don't know anymore. But yeah, my go-to job was always at a mall.
Yeah.
Was always a retail job somewhere. It was just,
What did you make back then? Do you remember?
oh my God, I have no idea.
Yeah,
No idea.
I bet it wasn't a lot.
Probably not, but it was something.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest with you, you probably paid our 2/3 of the rent, and my money went into my checking account, and I mean, details like that are
Yeah.
foggy, but
Okay, so
Yeah.
to get into a little bit of my season, that year up to that point was probably my worst season that I had had. Truth is that looking back on it now, that season wasn't all that bad when it comes to being a professional pitcher, but my rookie season was really good. My baseball life up until my first season of pro ball was really good. So I had, for most of my athletic life up until this season, I had a lot of success. So I didn't really know what it felt like to not be dominant. I didn't know what it felt like to give up home runs a lot. I didn't know what it felt like to get tagged with a loss, because I think that season I ended up with more of a losing record. I could go back and look, but I think I I think I finished the year like 8-11 or 9-11 or something.
Okay.
Right. And I think my ERA, earned run average, was somewhere in the 4s, which again, looking back on it, is not outstanding, but it's not horrible.
Okay.
But to that point, like in my first in rookie ball, I had a great season. I think my ERA was in the 2s, like a 2.3 or something. Like again, so when it comes to ERA, that's a great number. And then to have an ERA in the mid 4s and a losing record, and I think my walks were somewhat high. I felt like it wasn't a great season. And I remember having coaches, maybe like higher ups, like, some of the brass in the organization, telling me that, the season wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Were you going around talking about how bad you were doing?
No, no,
okay.
no. But I think it was just, just in conversation, because, the staff would, whenever they would come in town, when I say brass, I talk about roving instructors, not just your team coaches.
Yeah.
Professional baseball, there's higher up player development, decision-making people who will travel around to the different minor league teams just to check in and see progress in person.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there was conversation I had, and I just remember, being told that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So maybe there was something in the conversation that led them to believe that. So that was kind of in my career, and again, in getting to where I am right now, in my career, that was a big learning year, and I had to do and I don't think that I was yet mature enough to really be able to process the whys well.
You were 18.
I know. Looking back, I know. And even then, like, you're technically an adult.
Yeah.
Right. Where I'm at now with getting to work with kids this age, working with kids older than that, working with a lot of kids younger than that, at 18, I wasn't able to process things well, let alone these, all these kids and our expectations. You asked me earlier in this what parents could do better. The expectations that we put on kids are more often than not unrealistic, and in some cases completely unrealistic when it comes to consistency, emotional control, this and this. But like, we have to understand that where they are mentally, most of these kids they are just babies still.
Yeah.
But then how impressionable they are, that if we fall apart, if we make comments, if we have unnecessary emotional reactions, that's what they're learning. They're learning how to react like that. They're learning to blame the umpire.
Or to be emotionally reactive.
Yeah, they're not, these kids obviously aren't at the place where they hear someone act a fool and say something stupid to think like, man, why are they saying that? They probably shouldn't do that. Their mind is like, yeah, what he said, or what mom said, so it's, anyways, to get to where I was, as an 18-year-old, had my first kind of really down year, it was kind of hard to take, hard to process. I just remember leaving that season not feeling great. Whereas the season before in rookie ball, leaving the season, and I remember I was very ignorant at the time, but I even remember thinking like, man, if I face Ken Griffey Jr. right now, I can get him out. Yeah, that's just, again, how ridiculous.
Right.
Ridiculous. I mean, give me 10 at-bats, I'm able to get him out a couple times. But that's just a whole nother level that people don't realize how good those guys are on TV.
Yeah.
But a couple moments in that season that really stick out to me. There was one game, and this kind of comes into play with you. You're going to share a little story here.
Okay.
We played up in Wisconsin, Appleton, Wisconsin. So we got really far north here.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, the game has taken us all over the country.
Yeah.
Appleton, Wisconsin is very far away from where we are right now.
Yeah.
Far away from a lot of places that we've been. We traveled by bus. You were in my car following us.
I'm not sure why we decided that either.
Yeah. Give us tell us a little story about you following the bus.
Oh gosh. I don't even remember what time of year it was. Like, weather didn't play a factor. So it must have been, let's say, mid-season, which doesn't matter. Anyways, so getaway day is when you guys leave after your game, typically a night game. I mean, Sundays are only day games. So you leave on the bus after you've played a game, you go and shower, eat, get your bags packed, you get on the bus and you go. So let's say you're leaving between 11 p.m. and midnight. It's late. And I was going with you. Can't ride the bus though. So I have to follow the bus. And at one point, the trip was long enough that we stopped, like at a rest stop or something. Isn't there like a bathroom on the bus though, for you guys?
Yeah, but the bus driver needs to stop.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, we're at a rest stop. It's got to be the middle of the night by now, and he rattles off a bunch of highways that we're gonna take, and then we're there. And of course, I'm just like, okay, sure,
You didn't take any notes?
No, no, because I'm just following. So I really don't have to do any thinking. I'm just following. And as I'm following, I realize that I need gas. And we're passing through like a bigger city, and I cannot remember what city it is, but we're passing through a bigger city, and I'm like, I've got to get gas. We have no way of communicating. Like, we should have had walkie-talkies or something. We had no way of communicating, and I have to get off of this highway to get gas. But like, side note, this bus driver is hauling. There's no 55. No, we're flying. And I like zip off the freeway. It takes me a couple of gas stations before I find one that's open. So that takes time. I get gas, I get back on the freeway, and I'm just flying, thinking I'm going to catch up to you guys, and I never do. You guys are just gone, and I don't know what to do. And in my mind, when you're lost, you stay put. So I just stayed on the same freeway. It's like, I'm not getting off. I don't know where I'm going. I saw no signs for Appleton, nothing. So I'm driving. It's the middle of the night, starting to dawn, and I'm on some freeway, and I start seeing signs for Green Bay. And again, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know how far I am away from Green Bay or from where we started or whatever. I just know that I can't find you. And I decide to pull a U-turn in the middle of the interstate, and I drive through the grass median. I start going back the other way because I just passed an exit that had like a little gas station pit stop like that was open. Because I think by now it's like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. So it's literally I've been driving all night. Probably didn't eat or drink anything. I was just so stressed out trying to find you guys. So I pull up to this, it's some like one of those access roads that just runs parallel to an interstate. So there's traffic, but it's not heavy. I pull into this gas station, Minute Mart, and I go in, and I remember there's a few people in there. They're getting coffee, they're gassing up, whatever, and it's probably farmers, to be honest. And I stand behind somebody, and it's my turn at the counter, and I'm looking for Appleton, Wisconsin, and I don't know where I am. And I just start crying because I can't hold it together anymore. And the guy's like, that's okay. And turns out it was literally like that road that gas station was on. I just had to go back. I had to backtrack a bit, and it was like the town was right there. I knew what hotel you were staying in. That's the only, thank God. That's the only, it's like I'm trying to get to this hotel in Appleton. And it just turned out that it was maybe an hour, 45 minutes, not that far that I had to go back the other direction. And it was like, if I just stayed on that road and went for this long, I would see it.
Oh my gosh.
And I did.
I mean, literally, guardian angels or the grace of God or something got me there safely. And I walked in at like 6 a.m. Like the sun is up, you know. And I asked the lady what room you're in. She can't tell me. She has to call, so she has to wake you up and probably whoever you were rooming with. And then you told me what room number you were, and I think I went up and just crashed out. Like,
My gosh.
went to sleep after a million pounds of stress, you know, melted off after I like was there.
How did we survive?
You know, like anything else that has to do with that trip, I have no recollection of. I don't even remembering driving back to Rockford. I don't remember getting back there. Obviously, we did.
Yeah.
Somehow.
I don't know how we survived back then.
I don't.
No cell phones.
I don't either.
It's just crazy to even think of a world without having that sort of
It is.
communication, without having maps.
But like the trip was long enough that being in a regular passenger car, I had to stop for gas. So that to me, that means it was like 6 or 7 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you guys hadn't been there that long by the time I got there. Maybe you'd been there for an hour or two. I don't know. But you would think driving on the way back, I must not have gotten lost.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But I literally have no other recollection of that time outside of being lost. And then, of course, when we go back to Appleton, when you're coaching, we end up back there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that then. But it was just like Appleton, Wisconsin. That was wild.
So that was my first year, and unfortunately, I don't remember a ton of detail from that year, except that it wasn't at least from a pitching standpoint, it wasn't a great season, but it was a good learning experience. After the season was over, went home. We drove back to Washington.
Yeah.
And then I went down to Instructional League after, and we didn't talk about this last episode, but after my rookie season, I also went to Instructional League. So Instructional League was, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. It was almost like a condensed spring training, but after the season for more of just the prospects. So I did that after my rookie year, and then I did it again after this season. So it was just more practice, more individual time with coaches, back down in at the spring training complex. And then from there, came home and started my off season. Now a typical off season would involve a lot of strength training.
Resting your arm.
Resting your arm, yep. So that, you know, and this might be another topic for another episode, but there's some argument out there about, should pitchers completely shut their arm down? Should pitchers just continue some light throwing? I always, my whole career, even when I was younger, I always took time off. My dad, he must have read that somewhere, but I would go.
You probably took a little time off and just let your whole body rest
so
before starting like the strength training part of workouts.
It was about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So they would say their recommendation was take 2 weeks off, just let your body heal up, do whatever.
Because it's a lot. I don't know if people like fully understand.
Yeah.
Like it's a full-time physical job starting from spring training. So even if you do March 1 to September 1 or even October 1, you're working every day, maybe 1 day a month off if you're lucky, but it really is every single day you're doing the same routine for however many months that is.
Yeah, and you're trying to find that balance, you know, like as I was a starting pitcher, so I technically didn't work
Right.
except for one every 5 days, but there was stuff you do on your in-between days to get ready for your next start. And finding that balance of how hard to push your body, you know, when to go hard, you know, how you progress things during those 4 days to make sure that when day 5 comes for your next start, that your body is at 100%. You know, and if you have little nagging injuries or little nagging pains here and there, you have to learn how to manage those, you know, and it's, when you're doing that sort of stuff every day for 6 to 7 months straight, rarely is your body going to feel 100%. Rarely. It just doesn't work that way. So you're trying to one, keep your body in good enough shape, but two, find that perfect routine for you, because again, everybody's a little bit different, that what you need. And I ended up finding it later in my career, which we'll get into, because at that stage, like that was my first full season, you know, I went through some, you know, dead arm stuff, bicep tendonitis in my shoulder. I went through some stuff that I really hadn't ever experienced. I mean, I remember that first year, backtracking a little bit to spring training that year, I went through a phase of dead arm where you just feel this incredible achiness in your arm. It's a fancy word for fatigue. But I went through some really severe dead arm in spring training because my body, I'd never done that before. I'd never thrown that much every single day for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
So, and even like in the off season, like I might have an off season throwing plan, but if I'm not throwing the baseball every single day in the off season, then I jump into that spring training and I'm throwing bullpens, throwing in drills, pitching in games, throwing the baseball every single day. You know, it's a shock to the arm, you know, so you got to find that balance, which again, I ended up finally figuring it out later in my career and was able to pretty much finish the season as healthy and as strong as I was as it started. It took time to get there. And unfortunately, that's one of the things I get to help families with now is how to manage that sort of stuff, which back then, you know, my dad didn't know any better. And unfortunately, there wasn't, way back then, you were told to stay out of the training room and do this. And, you know, it was seen as weakness if you were to acknowledge, you know, that like I'm dealing with something, you know, some arm pain. So it's a little bit different now, you know, now, like even when I was coaching with the Angels, there was a strong message to the players. If you feel anything, you need to come talk to us and let us help you understand what you're dealing with. Whereas back then it was stay out of the training room.
Yeah.
That was kind of the message.
Unless it's serious. Yeah.
Yeah.